All right, welcome on Inside the Entrepreneur Wrap. It's a show that we get inspired, we learn, we grow from other entrepreneurs' story. He's the CEO of Power Digital Marketing, an online internet marketing agency that helps businesses scale and drive revenue through digital marketing. Over the past 5 years, he's grown the company from a team of 3 to a team of 50 plus. So we're going to get into that. Power Digital has been named San Diego's healthiest company, fastest growing, top places to work, and recently mentioned on the Inc. 500 companies and best places to work. I welcome Grayson Lafrenz to the show. What's going on, man?
Yeah, thanks, David. Really appreciate you having me. Great to be here.
Of course. Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it. So usually I like to peel back the layers a little bit and get into your upbringing and kind of try to find out about that first entrepreneurial hustle. So we'll start there. Your upbringing, your parents, how was that like as a child?
Yeah, I was super lucky. Grew up here in San Diego, just in La Jolla. So a great place to grow up. I don't think I have the typical entrepreneurial upbringing of mowing lawns or selling. I mean, I had the lemonade stand that everyone had, but I wasn't like super. I probably was interested in that for like 5 minutes. So I don't really have the traditional story. I think I got very interested in entrepreneurship when I got my first job. I had gotten in trouble at school. I had actually gotten suspended for school for a minor thing, and then convinced my parents to let me go out on Halloween. And, we had some eggs and there was a slight egging incident that went bad.
Okay.
And so that was it for my parents. And so they made me get a full-time job. Usually my job was sports.
Right.
But I worked at Sam Goody. And I think I lasted about 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm never, ever doing anything like this. So I think that was at age 15.
Usually that's in the entrepreneur news, like I just can't work for anybody, kind of that rebellious attitude. Or
I think it was a little bit of that. That job was just also miserable. I mean, I didn't mind working for people early in my career, especially because I was lucky. Some of the early places that I worked, they gave me a lot of freedom to be entrepreneurial and to kind of run my own business and control my own destiny. But that first job was awful and definitely got me thinking that there had to be a better way.
Awesome. So you go to Arizona, bear down. You got your boy Steve Kerr in the finals right now with the Warriors. How much do you follow Arizona and sports? Because it seems like you're a sports guy too.
Yeah, I follow Arizona basketball specifically really closely. I mean, I follow high school basketball ridiculously closely. So I know all the juniors, even the sophomores.
Oh, looking for the recruitment classes. Yeah, right on.
Exactly.
So how is Arizona for you on the college level? I guess there's a lot of talk right now in the entrepreneur community about upper education and when people are going into debt to try to learn these different skills, and is it really even necessary in certain fields? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on your upper education experience.
Yeah, so I loved Arizona. It was a blast. I've never been a big student. I was like a B student and did all right, but I had ADD and kind of just struggled in general to stay engaged. For me, the biggest value of college was really just becoming an adult and learning how to live on my own. I also took the easy route on the majors and went with the easiest major offered at the school, which I don't recommend. Looking back, I wish I would have done business and gotten some of that early foundation.
Yep.
But really, I'm not a huge believer in upper education. I think for certain things, if you want to be an investment banker or in accounting, obviously, and whatnot, it makes sense. But for a lot of the sales, marketing, entrepreneurship roles, they just don't teach that in school anyways. And so I think it's more the maturity that you get from college.
And it moves so quickly, it's almost impossible to keep up with the curriculum, if you will, with how our industry is moving as well.
Yeah, totally. We have a really great internship program at Power Digital. It can get a lot better. We've worked on it hard over years, and we still have a long way to go. But we work very closely with San Diego State, UCSD, USD. And I believe that the students would tell you that they learn more in one semester of their internship in terms of marketing than their 4 years of college.
Yeah, for me too. It's like just a hands-on experience and just being able to get dirty, roll your sleeves up always ends up kind of staying in your brain more than reading books and doing 50 multiple choice questions on a test type deal.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges with a lot of the people that are teaching the curriculum at the universities is that there's a lot of career academics. And so I think it's hard to teach something if you haven't actually done it yourself and have have the experience of actually doing it.
Yep, 100%. So talk me through after college, what's your first true business concept, and how do you start to go down the path of I want to own my own company, start my own business, kind of go down that path?
Yeah, so it's funny. So one of my business partners that we started Power Digital with, Rob Rodriguez, Rob studied entrepreneurship and came from a real entrepreneurial family. And so I think he turned me on as well, and seeing his dad, who was a really successful entrepreneur, and getting to spend time with him in college. And, you know, he flew us on private jets and introduced us into some things that were like, made me think, man, I want to have my life kind of like this.
Yeah.
So we had written a bunch of different business plans and kind of had some different hustles in college. And then we had
And you
one
guys met in college, or how?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We met freshman year of college.
Nice.
And we lived together for junior and senior year. And so we had written some different business plans. We had one we were really excited about, and we graduated, and we were trying to raise money to do it. And really quickly, you know, as my parents networked me around, I learned that I didn't know anything. Nobody was going to give me any money for this idea. And so one of my dad's good friends told me to go get a skill set in recommended sales. Because obviously driving revenue and driving business for any company is typically one of the biggest challenges. And if you can do that, then you can typically make other things work. So that's how I ended up starting. And so I went and worked for an agency of Xerox, which was awesome because worked with hundreds of different companies. They were the biggest agency of Xerox at the time and privately owned. And the CEO or the founder was here in San Diego, and they had about 10 offices. And then while I was there, they actually sold to Xerox. So I got to see that whole experience and be a part of that. And that gave me a lot of perspective and made me realize, you know, that was
Take me back, because
I
I geek out over some of this stuff, like that original business plan, because I think looking back at it always probably.
So two that were like that almost took shape, or not almost took shape, but that we wanted to have take shape. One of them was a college prep course. And so it was like, you know, I was doing research, and there's so many students, and I had friends that just failed out of college and weren't prepared. And so it was going to be a digital e-course that teaches high school students getting ready to come into college, you know, the life skills that you need. So how to open a bank account. You know, I had a problem, I think, freshman year where I'd constantly overdraft my ATM account. Parents didn't like that very much. So I'd teach them things like that. You know, I mean, even basic things like laundry and whatnot. And so we had figured, and the hypothesis was that there's this big issue of people failing out of school. Parents pay tons of money for that education. And so if parents can pay a few $100s to give their child a much better opportunity to make it through, that would be something that they would do. So that was the first one. The other one was a restaurant idea, which I'm really thankful never happened because I've no interest. Yeah. But it was like the stock market of restaurants. And so we'd have like drinks and food, and it would be based on an algorithm. And so based on how many people would be ordering something, the cost would go up. And then if something was less popular, the cost would go down type idea. But you know, lost momentum quickly. And I actually worked at a restaurant to try to see if that was something that would make sense. And I was probably the worst waiter of all time.
Yeah, I was a busser all through our college, so I feel that.
Yeah, I was I actually, my last day, I think I dropped about 8 glasses. You know, the tray on a table were about 7.
I've done that as well.
And that was it for me.
We share that experience. So going through Xerox, and a lot of entrepreneurs say too, like, try to work out some of those kinks at other businesses in a way, right? Like, let me learn either the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it, and try to shape me that way rather than going straight into being a CEO. So it sounds like Xerox did that for you.
Totally. And I was lucky because I had an amazing mentor there. And I mean, he's probably one of the most successful entrepreneurs and business people that I've ever been around. You know, if you're like, who's your number one pick to start a new business, this guy would probably be my number one pick.
Interesting.
So I got to learn from him, and totally, like you said, made a ton of mistakes. And I think sales is also a very good launching off point into entrepreneurship, because you're kind of running your own territory, and especially outside sales, where you're consulting, you're running your own book of business. And so it's on you to do the activities, to get the results, to figure out, you know, how to make it happen within your own opportunity.
I would love to get into a little bit of what you learned there, because I think sales, there's so many highs, there's so many lows, and how you kind of attack that. So what are some of the original things starting at Xerox that you learned in the sales process that kind of taught you the way of doing it right?
Yeah. So the first thing I learned really quickly was just tenacity and to be aggressive. And sales is a total numbers game, and so is marketing. And so with sales, it's all activities. If you do the activities, even if you suck early on in your career, which I sucked my first couple months, but I was just relentless. And so I talked to more people, I prospected harder.
Numbers game.
And the numbers come out. So I learned that you can totally control the result if you give it the effort and you do the activities. And I'd say that was like the first big lesson that I had, which is I'm just going to outwork everybody else and talk to more people. And I was able to maintain that. And then as the skill set starts to follow and you actually have skills to ask great questions and figure out people's problems and show them how to solve their problems. You combine those two things together, and you should be able to be successful in anything you do.
And how much of that was cold outreach?
It was almost all. So we, in the role that I was in, and the salespeople within the agency, Xerox used the agencies to acquire new businesses.
Okay.
So it wasn't much account management. It was almost all prospecting.
So from a cold, I'm always kind of, I guess, fascinated about the cold approach, because you're trying to create this relationship out of thin air. And at the end of the day, they know that you're selling to them unless you can obviously try to work that. So did you find tools or ways that you can start those relationships where it's not like, hey, buy from me now on the first contact?
Yeah, so I started there in 2007, and the organization overall was like really heavy, like go door to door. And I saw that not working anymore because you just couldn't get through. I wanted to work with the CEO and CFO and not spin my wheels with an office manager. And so that I cut out. And so I focused at that time heavily on the phone and just calling through. And I had a formula that worked really well where you'd reference a marquee account that was relevant to them, and you'd hit on one or two problems, and then you'd book the meeting. And so I would just hit the phone hard, get the meetings, and then and work it like that. I think today it's changed totally, though.
You and I talked about how we just hate phone
Yes,
calls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's all outbound email today on the prospecting, and having a really good, same formula as what I used on the phone with a marquee account, and having a really good pointed pain point that you hit for them and putting some fear into them that they're missing out on something. But the phone just doesn't work because...
And it's funny, guys like Grant Cardone, who are big in the sales industry, is still huge on that, and maybe certain industries, but I just think it's dying very quickly.
I do too. I think it's relevant to when you're doing the outbound email, to also when you see people opening and stuff, to hit them on the phone as well. And there's definitely probably certain roles that you might be selling into where the phone's viable. But if you're going after the C level, I just think it's very difficult to get them engaged on the phone.
So tell me about Power Digital. So is this directly after Xerox? Was there another business venture that you tried? So tell me about that.
Yeah, so there were several other businesses. So right after Xerox, they had sold. And so then I left, and my partner Robert and I were part of a startup called Nui. Okay. And it was kind of similar to Groupon, and it was really about monetizing discounts. So the concept was, these retailers give away discounts when they don't need to. And so they shouldn't give them when people are going to come in anyways, but they should give them when they're slow and they need them. And so we built out that whole sales team for that, and did the whole pre-launch, and it had a really good money behind it, and the guy whose idea it was, and the founder. And then the technology wasn't delivered, and they pulled the plug on it. And then from there, Robert, myself, and a couple other guys started a company called Squared Out, which started as kind of a social calendaring platform, which was a bad idea. And just, we didn't have, it was a bad idea in general because we didn't execute well on the product. In terms of, we should have made it more of a bolt-on to existing platforms that already have user bases.
But this is an interesting tidbit that you and Robert meet your freshman year of college, and you guys are constantly scheming, like trying to find that business model. And already we've gone through like 4 different things. I mean, there's a lot, 99% of people, they quit, they give up. This is hard. And it seems like that all built up to where you are now. Yeah,
totally. And I think I was lucky because I was real successful at Xerox. And so I saved a lot of money. And so, what we're talking through now, we were making no money.
But you had the ability to trial and error.
I was able to hang on. Yeah. So then that kind of, we pivoted it. It ended up being an ad network for publishers, which got traction. And we pivoted to that because the publishers were asking us for it. But then the timing was bad. The publisher industry is just not in a good spot. And so that kind of happened. And then from there, we found what I thought was going to be the big thing. And we partnered with this engineer who had created this waterless urinal cartridge. And so these waterless urinals had been mandated to be put in California and really heavily, because of wanting to save water and the crisis there. But the technology was super flawed. And so he created a retrofit product that would retrofit into the existing urinals. And it was like the razor blade model. Once they bought one, then they'd have to replace them again and again and again. So to give you an example, we sold these into Fort Huachuca military base, which had, thousands of these urinals. And they had obviously people, military people working out, drinking lots of fluids. And so they would have to replace these things like monthly. And, the replacement cartridge would retail for like $39 or $39 to $79. And, 15 of those would weigh like 2 pounds. So you can ship them all over. The margin was, it's a very simple product. The margin was through the roof. And then we ended up getting into some litigation there from the competitor that we were retrofitting. And We got some legal judgments against us, which we allowed us to still sell, but really regulation then ended the game for us. And so we had used internet marketing really heavily to build the demand for that business and to get the deals. And so my cousin at the time, Nick Slettengren, who's the third founder at Power Digital, he was working at an agency, and Robert and I had hired agencies. And so we just saw this big problem with agencies where there's a lot of these fluffy branding agencies, strategy agencies. But what we really wanted and needed was a group that can come in, do the strategy, but execute and drive revenue. So drive leads, drive e-commerce sales, and make money for the clients, and not just tell them what they should be doing or give them ideas, or help make clients feel good when they see their brand.
Right. So is you moving to Power Digital, is that bootstrapped like the other ones were, or is that asking for investment? How'd you guys get that off the ground?
Yeah, so it was bootstrapped. So we were in that lawsuit and we were kind of stopped with the other business. And so we started doing internet marketing for one client, like a friend of ours. And then we did good work, and we got kind of referred, and then it just kind of grew very organically. So it was totally bootstrapped. That business made money from day one, or from month one, and we've never not made money in a month.
That's very cool. So we talked to this about a couple of weeks ago when you and I met, but I really want to get in granular to the scaling aspect. Going from 3 employees to 50 plus in 5 years is really an insane growth. So I really want to dig into that and what you've learned and how that process went when you really had to start scaling quickly.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We felt like we have really pulled back on the reins and grown really slowly. So we always felt like that. That was a core value of ours. Is one of the flaws that we saw with agencies is these big agencies, they become political, cookie cutter, and we wanted to be custom, strategic, like being able to turn on a dime and pivot for clients. So it felt very slow. We could have grown a lot quicker than we did. But what it really has always come down to for us is developing our leaders and developing really good managers, but not having too many layers of management. So we've always been a very flat organization. Even today at about 60 people, it's very flat. And everybody's role in our company is a revenue generating. So it's either the product oriented, but it's tied directly back to getting results for our clients, which retains them, grows them, brings new business. And so that's always been kind of our core value, so that as we staff up with headcount, we don't ever have these profit dips, because everybody's really tied to that.
I think one thing through trial and error that I learned, being 5 years in the game as well, is in the early stages, there just wasn't a great onboarding program. There wasn't great processes. There wasn't great department manuals. And maybe it sounds like maybe with Nick's background too, you guys were able to fast forward that a little bit, or did you go through some of those same growing pains where you're like, God, we got to get our stuff together on this stuff?
Yeah. So one of our core values is to be really entrepreneurial. And I think we've lacked processes in a big way, especially early on. We're actually just starting to layer a lot more of that in now.
Okay.
But onboarding was an issue for us. We've developed some technology. We have this command center that really improves onboarding now. And I think it's by far the best that it's ever been today than before. But really, it would come down to somebody coming on and then us working very, very closely with them to coach them up. And one thing that we were is very selective on who we hired. And actually, our early employees, I'd say of our first 6 employees, one of them is still with us, one of our best guys, Bill Wilkinson. Another one, Emily, was like the matriarch of the company and just incredible. And she's moved on to do some nonprofit work. But the other original people were just the wrong people. And it almost killed us. But luckily enough, they phased out and phased themselves out. And then the next wave of people that we recruited in were completely the right people. They were all about, the solution. They understood that startups, that, hey, you're figuring things out as you go. You're wearing multiple hats. Yeah. So they embraced that and they love that. And that was really our key to probably going from 6 people to that 20 type range.
So in the early going, kind of, I guess, promoting your superstar employees to the higher tier positions, but they weren't necessarily ready or the right fit for that job.
Yeah, totally. And so when we were probably at about 25 people, we turned around and we're like, okay, we need to have, it was like everybody was reporting up to the founders. It was not going to work.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we're like, we needed to have legit layers of leadership. And so we always wanted to promote from within. We have kind of the Power Digital way, that kind of like the Patriot way, cheesy said, but
no,
it's like our way of doing things and it's different and it works. And so we want to bring in outside talent always, but we wanted to promote from within. So we realized that we need to do that. And so what we ended up doing is, I remember I was sitting on my couch over the holidays and like, how are we going to get this next wave of growth? And it was, well, we need to develop our leaders. And that was the theme of the year, was developing our leaders. And so I was like, what grew me the most as a leader? Because I went from sales to sales manager, and I was a horrible sales manager when I first did it. Because you go from being kind of star player to coach, and it's hard. And what really helped me was I read this book called The 1 Minute Manager, and it was like the most simple book ever. And it was all about, goal setting and making the target and the goal very clear. And then as people are going towards it, just really encouraging them and reinforcing great behaviors and catching them doing things right. And then as they get off track, just pointing them back in the right direction. So with about 8 of the leaders, we read that book together and we studied it and we implemented it each week and we measured how we implemented it.
So book club style.
Yep, like a book club. And that was like, and then they got, they had a test and everything, and that was a game changer. I think if we didn't do that, we would have had some real problems.
Interesting. So talk to me about your hiring tips, because again, to go to 3 to 50, you have to have, I think, a decent hiring process to make sure you're getting the right people in. So what are the things you've, like I said, learned from trial and error and kind of what you're implementing today to get the right person in the right seat?
Yeah, so there's definitely been a lot of trial and error, and I think we have a pretty stringent process now. So now the applicant comes in and they get screened by our office manager and they answer some questions. Then they interview with the department head, so whoever heads the department that they're looking to enter. If they pass that, then they're given a technical assessment. So we have these tests that they take. Okay. And if they pass the technical assessment, they'll meet with the entire team. So it's like a panel interview. Pretty informal though. All of our interviews are pretty like informal. So it's, relaxed and very conversational. And then if they pass that, then they interview with me.
Gotcha.
And then, so I interview every employee. I actually stopped doing that about a year ago, and it was a big mistake. Partly because of vetting, but also I want to have a great relationship with every employee. And I think if you're part of the hiring process, and they know that, you want them and they want you, and that you were, that makes a really big difference in how everything starts.
Interesting. So with for me, I think looking at it now, I just hire way more on culture more than skill. I think the skill can be learned, and I think you probably feel the same way. So now, like I mentioned, 5 years in, is that the number one thing you're looking for on those interviews, on those processes? Yeah,
culture is a must. They have to align with our core values. Certain roles we care more about having really strong skills coming in, and certain we feel we can teach it more. But the other big thing in our industry, in our business that I look for is people that have great follow through and that they do what they say they're going to do. And I think that's a real lost art. As soon as somebody doesn't follow through, or there's somebody that when they hit a hurdle, they fall down and they'll kind of go on to something else. I can't trust those people, and that in our culture and environment where people are given a lot of freedom to do their job and to try things and test things, those people just can't be successful. Yeah. So the culture and then really looking for that are two of the big things, and then skill obviously is key. It's
funny you say that. Kind of even in our screening process, we put deadlines. So we'll have 100 people apply to a job, let's say for an assistant job. Then we'll say, hey, in 48 hours you need to answer these 3 questions, and then in 24 hours you need to send this, and this over to. And they're simple questions, but it still shows like you have a deadline, you're going to hit it, and it literally weeds out 90% of candidates every single time just by saying, hey, Grayson, send me your day or your name, your date of birth, and your hobby. And just like a simple question like that, and like 80% of people can't even follow through with that. It's just insane.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's so smart because it saves you time, and it's exactly. I think it's key in 2 ways. One is that you can see if they can follow direction, but 2, it's always good to start asking people to do something for you, because if they're just a looky-loo and they're not really sold on what you're doing, then they're probably not going to do it. And you don't want to waste your time with those people.
Yeah. And I think when you get a job, just as a round number, 100 people apply for it, there's usually like 5 to 7 that really, really want to work for STN or Power Digital, what have you. The other is kind of doing a spray and pray approach. They want to move to SD, or they want to get a new job and they hate their job. So trying to find those people that actually want to be there rather than I just want to make some money doing something type deal.
Totally. I agree. And the other big key, I think, when vetting and interviewing that I've always practiced is it's easy. I don't look for the positives in the interview. I do, and I'll write them down. But, most good people, or even, good people that aren't even great, you'll find tons of positives. So I really try to find the red flags.
Yeah.
And if you can vet those red flags out before you even have to have conversations, that's perfect.
Very cool. So talk to me about your core values and what you guys kind of stand for. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, so we our core values are a little different. We have these rules that we live by. And the rules that we live by are simple. They were actually created by our team. So it was something that we did together, and they've been refreshed over the years. But a few that, one that I like the most is focus on the solution, not the problem. So I have plenty of problems and things that I know we need to fix. And so I really value and respect team members that identify problems and then fix them, because we have so many and we can get so much better. And that initiative is really key to us.
And I feel like that's the thing where I've kind of tried to deal with too, is like let's find a solution or let's complain about it. There's pretty much two things you can do. So let's complain about it, or let's offer up a solution and try to fix it type deal.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree totally. And I think it's empowering for our team. And I mean, we have a lot of team members now that are running departments or have created products because they saw a problem and they went and fixed it. And then they found out that solution to the problem was something that people wanted to pay for and that could make the company money.
Yep. Talk to me about your retention as well, because I think you've really found a good way of incorporating your staff into the overall goals, obviously, but also as revenue's coming in and profits coming in, being able to kind of share that across the board. So how'd you figure that out, and how have you kind of rolled it out?
Yeah. So as an agency, we have a 95% retention rate, which is
awesome.
Like record breaking
Yep.
or very high for our industry. And there's been a couple keys to that. First is hiring the right people in the first place. So everything we just talked about.
Yep.
The other big key that we did a couple of years ago, and I think it's key for retention, but also just really having a motivated workforce, is two things. So one is we developed these vital 5 goals that every team member fills out. And so the vital 5 are, how much money do you want to make this year?
Yeah.
If you were like stoked on what you made and you're like, this was an amazing year, how much money is that? 2 is, what is the one skill set that you really want to improve on? And then 3 is, what is the role that you want to have in a year from now? So what do you want your role to look like? 4 is the big personal goal. Is it a trip, a savings goal? What's the big personal goal? Or if you do this, you're like, I had a great year. And then lastly is the support needed. So we develop those and we measure a scoreboard against those. We review those quarterly.
Nice.
And then the second big key is we launched a profit sharing program. So we do about 25% profit sharing with our team. Once you've been at Power Digital for 6 months, you qualify, and it's paid quarterly. We've never not paid it since it's been launched. And team members make a huge amount of money with that. And so they're very, very motivated, to make decisions like a business owner because they're
Don't
paid
waste
on profit.
money. Yeah, exactly.
And then B, to stick around, because if they're a rainmaker, they could make more at Power Digital than, probably any other place on the market.
I love that. So in your opinion, what's the best part about managing people, and what's one thing you struggle with, or that the worst part about managing people?
Yeah, so I love working with people in general. That's what excites me, and I really like to see people improve. For me, though, it's interesting. There's like certain people that I can manage and work with really well, and then there's certain personalities that are amazing employees and people that I don't do as well with. And so I think learning that, I should get better at adapting my style, but also learning that and then aligning, managers with the people that they're going to be able to support best is really key. But I'd say I actually, more than managing, I like to be like the mentor role. So I like to more manage maybe senior team members.
Gotcha.
And where you're not having to be as micromanaged or on top of it or doing the constant training. And then get to play more of the mentor role to some of the more junior team members. Where you can help them with certain things and live coach them and whatnot, but not be reviewing their forms and making sure that, this is happening or that's happening. Cause I get a little bit weighed down in the details with that sometimes.
So, I always talk about like our business model has changed like every 6 months for the last 5 years, just because this industry is moving so quickly, especially in live events, sports, entertainment. I know the same with you. The technology is moving quicker than it ever has before. I think people's needs, and I think, what's great about what you guys are doing too, in 2018, a lot of business owners are finally starting to realize how important digital marketing is. It's not just a, ugly cousin. Social media is not just something that you have to learn about. So how have you kind of learned to adapt and evolve and try to fill those holes for your clients as they kind of come up?
Yeah, so we take a real consultative approach to how we engage with clients, and so we do a full audit. We'll get in their analytics, we'll audit everything they're doing, and we'll find the good, the bad, the ugly. And basically what we're looking for is how to make them more money. So how to drive more revenue, but having it fit within the metrics of their company so it's profitable and it's good business for them. And so as we've done that, part of it is evolving current strategies and staying ahead of the curve, which the key there is keeping your team really hungry and pushing them to innovate and test stuff and make mistakes and not having that be a problem. The other key is just seeing, as we do these audits, we get to see how a lot of people are succeeding. And so then looking at those things on one company and saying, hey, can we apply this
using
over
that
here?
knowledge? Yeah.
So we have a big advantage as an agency is, I mean, I personally probably look at analytics and accounts of maybe 300 brands a year. And so, you get a look under the hood, and there's no better place to see the answers to where the industry's going and what maybe is outdated and shouldn't be played anymore, and what you should be doing that maybe you're not doing.
So I'll ask you your favorite and least favorite, but what's your favorite part about the business you're currently in right now?
My favorite part is the people. We have amazing people. I love the millennial and the younger group as well, because if you cater to them, they're just so motivated, so hungry to learn. It's really inspiring to get to work with them. So I'd say the people. And the second favorite part would be I just love, as an entrepreneur with ADD, we get to work with all different types of business models, different products, services.
Quickly,
yeah. So it's like you're basically getting to work on, I think we have 85 clients. And so you get to work on 85 different types of businesses as opposed to just one thing.
And we talk about, I know we're both an EO, but there's always a top 5%, there's always a bottom 5%. So about the current business you're in, what's the least favorite thing that you have to tackle?
So least favorite thing is just bad clients. So, some people you work with and you're like, man, you're just a miserable person. Why? Like, it makes me realize sometimes, like when I'm a jerk to AT&T on the phone, I'm like, oh my God, I'm that bad client. I'm like, this is not going to they're not going to be more motivated to help me. They're not going to get a better result.
That's a really good point.
The key to that is deal flow. So that's what our focus is if we get insane deal flow and we have tons of leads and people that want to work with us,
have leverage.
Then you can tell typically whether they're going to be bad, and we just won't, even if it's great money, we won't take them. And then if we have one that's terrible, we'll tell them, hey, if you're complaining a lot and you have a problem, why don't you, go ahead and work with somebody else? And so I think that's the remedy, but still, I mean, our job is really fun when the clients are getting great results and they're happy. And it's not fun when they're not getting results and they're not happy.
Did you ever employ the fire your worst client type deal? When did that happen in your tenure?
Yeah. So we kind of employed that maybe actually, I'd say in Q3 of last year. We were just on fire and we were killing it. We were tight on bandwidth. And we didn't fire them like that brutally, but we said, hey, let's start phasing these out. And then actually it was interesting. I think we were probably a little bit a little too early to do that because we didn't quite have the deal flow. And so Q4 wasn't as strong as I would have liked because of that. So it was a good lesson to, about predictability when it comes to prospects coming in and deal flow. And so predictability and really having consistent ways that we acquire prospects and sales cycles is what we're focused on. And so now we're able to do that more and more.
And when you say phased out, do you guys usually work on year contracts, 2-year contracts? How do you usually try to, in an ideal world, how do you set that up?
So our average first engagement is a 9-month retainer. So it's all retainer. They're locked in. Obviously, if we violate the contract, they can get out, but there's no notice. They're locked in.
And it's hard to really dig in and really do everything you can do on a month-to-month. It's impossible. So it sounds like you set yourself up for success there.
Yep. And we use a bundled kind of pricing approach where, what we do is not a commodity, it's a solution. And so we will front load these contracts to where we are losing, we're doing so much it's not profitable because we want to start getting that snowball rolling downhill for the brand. And so we need them to be locked in because if we're going to invest in them and do that up front, we need to be given the opportunity on the back end to show them how much money we're making them and then to earn that second, that third, fourth contract.
I think one thing I've learned is as you go through failures, as you go through tough times in business, it kind of builds your character. You almost become immune to some of those jaw-dropping moments as you have more and more of them. So I want to dig into a section a little bit here on learning from failures. And we talked a little bit about some of those initial companies that you had, and I think how that kind of built your character. And I think that's why you're so successful now. But what was one of the most challenging times in business that you can think of, or what comes to mind, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. I remember early on at Power Digital, we'd lose a client or what I'm going to give you as an example of an employee, and I was devastated. I thought the world was ending.
Yeah, been there.
And I think when you're early on, I think it can be devastating in world ending because you just don't have the diversity or you don't have redundancy. But I remember an employee that we had early on. It wasn't quite the right culture fit, and it was one of those people that phased out on the early ones. But he was a great marketer. And
he was
saw
instrumental to your early
he was,
success.
and we saw star potential in him. And I think he was negatively influenced by other people. And I think if he had stayed on, he'd probably be, I can't imagine where he'd be now with us. But when he told us that he was leaving, I mean, I was like shell shocked.
Man.
It's funny. It was actually like right when I had joined EO, I was in a Launchpad forum meeting. I go into it. The people in the Launchpad forum meeting were probably like, "Oh my God, what's up with this guy?" Because I was like so bummed and down.
It's funny that that's the day you were in EO because you kind of needed that support or needed that guidance during that time.
Yeah, second forum ever in Launchpad with that. So it's funny.
It's funny how that works out. What's one of the biggest mistakes you think you've made in business?
Man, I've made a lot of mistakes. I think it's pinpointing the biggest. This is like the super cheesy answer, but a lot of them, like, they've been good lessons. And I think I've been lucky to where I haven't made one that's just catastrophic.
Yeah.
Always been able to rebound from them. And then, it's worked out all right. But there's been ones around, I've been told that, that myself and as a company that we're overly loyal. And so there's been certain employees where we've probably waited way too long to, redirect them or to, not replace them, but to just, agree with them that maybe there's a better fit for them and for us. But I think it's worked out, and I feel good about what we've always done there. And really every employee that we've had, even ones that have left, I consider close friends and care tremendously about. But I'd say it would probably be around personnel. There's also a couple hires that were made that we should not have made that probably set us back. Where we could have just gotten to where we wanted to go quicker, whether that was on our internal marketing or on certain products that we were launching. So I think it would be probably around, hiring and firing.
And I asked that because for me anyway, it is inspiring to hear other people. And like you mentioned before, like how that employee comes to you and it's like almost feels catastrophic and how you felt at that moment. But now if an employee leaves you 5 years later, it's like, cool, moving on to the next one. Like just as those moments continue to happen, how you kind of build up that, I guess, character or whatever it may be to continue to move forward.
Yeah, and I still take it, personally, and it hurts me. We've had only one employee that has left us that it wasn't, kind of a mutual decision in like the last 3 years.
That's awesome.
And I tried to convince her to stay, but she wanted to go travel the world. And so it was one of those ones where it's like
personal decisions.
But there's been others that there's one of our awesome team members, Kendall. She's amazing. 2 years ago, she's put in her notice. And I was like, no, there's been several that we fought for like that and fought for her, and she had amazing feedback. And I was like, oh, I totally understand why you want to leave, but let's, we can change this, we can fix this. And so there have been some of those especially earlier on. I learned huge lessons from those and fought to keep them and was able to keep them, but we got so much better because, it was, we said, hey, we're going to fix this right now. And we need to also adapt. I learned we have some team members that want to go as hard as possible. They want to make as much money as possible. They want world domination. And then we have other team members that are incredible team members and so we need to make sure that we can cater to both, because I don't want our culture to, we need both. In any good tribe, you need hunters and you need gatherers and you need
good point. I like that.
Chiefs and you need Indians. And so I think that's been a key lesson that I learned.
I know it's super cheesy to say, but the whole like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger thing, like to be able to be self-aware enough to like, all right, this happened, this kind of sucks, but how can we avoid it in the future? How can we learn from it? It sounds like all those different things you've kind of did some retrospect and said, why did this happen and how can I fix it, which is kind of that entrepreneur mindset.
Especially when it's really good people that you care about and that you value that are giving you that feedback.
Yeah.
So if it was somebody that I was like, they're a terrible performer, they're not good, I don't know if I would
take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I would receive it as well. Maybe I would get more, hurt. But with them, I was more, it was like when you disappoint your parents, I was more like, man, I can't believe that we've failed you.
Yeah.
I'll do anything to fix this type of thing.
What is your personal greatest fear and how do you manage that?
Personal greatest fear, sharks. I'm super scared. No.
Alligators for me.
I think personal greatest fear and how I manage that, I think it's just letting the people around me down, especially now with our team. Like we are a family. We've all put blood, sweat, and tears into what we're doing. And so obviously for myself, I want it to be super successful and flourish and do all the things that we want. But, I want to make sure for them that A, we do that, and B, that we keep adapting and creating the opportunities for them so that they stay at Power Digital
Yeah.
and they don't feel like they're treading water and say, hey, I got to go somewhere else. So we're giving them those leadership opportunities. My hope is that one of our team members now, and I think we've got 10 future CEOs in Power Digital.
Interesting.
So I think we have probably 10 plus team members that will be CEOs in the future. And I would love for one of them to take my job. I'm confident one of them will be better than I am at it, in the near future. And I think that would be the ultimate, sign of success.
When you're feeling out of it, how do you get inspired?
So I'm very competitive. And so I've learned like what drives me in business is seeing the scoreboard light up. And so we've tried to gamify a lot of things. And so I think for me, if I'm feeling really out of it, I like to get a deal done and see it go on the financials and see the scoreboard go
So still
up.
that sales mentality.
Yeah, that fires me up. Or even not even a new deal necessarily, just a client growing or a client getting great results, which leads to growth. So typically when I start getting bogged down, it's like, all right, let me go back to the RGAs, the revenue generating activities, and let me be a part of that really fun feeling of, look at this deal we just got done. This is huge for the company.
It sounds like you've kind of reverse engineered like your skill set and what kind of gets you up in the morning to what you're doing at Power Digital, because I'm sure Robert and some of the other like senior people are doing some of the other stuff that maybe you don't want to do, but maybe that they're more geeked out type deal.
No, for sure. Like Robert's insane with financials and and modeling and all the operational components, and so he's able to really focus in on that.
And you want to hunt.
Yeah, exactly. I that's not my strength, and I really enjoy the hunting component, and so getting to do that and strategize on deals and how to do deals and how to help brands is what I have a lot of fun with.
And is that mostly on you on a day-to-day basis? Do you have a team? Do you have how does from the sales standpoint?
So we have one dedicated salesperson, Mike Yako, who's a good friend and is just killing it. He's been with us for almost 2 years now.
Okay.
So Mike is doing a lot of it, and then myself, I'm not doing as much these days, more like supporting and more.
As long as you're retaining clients, you don't have to go out there and hunt for it.
And so I'll work on certain deals and I'll support Mike, and then our team is doing a lot of it too. So like our team, we have all types of ways that they get incentivized and paid. And so if they generate leads or referrals from clients and stuff, they get comped on it. And we have a lot of millennials that they don't get paid commissions unless they bring the lead. But they want to learn how to sell. That's fun, new stuff for them to learn, and it's a great skill set for us. And so, and obviously, if they get deals done, it goes into their profit sharing. So everybody is kind of a salesperson within the company, or our salespeople are more consultants. And so that's kind of how we've done it. So we don't have like a big sales team. It's really Mike and then myself and everybody else that pitches in.
I'm actually in the middle of writing an article right now. The 5 things I've learned 5 years in business. A huge one is peer groups and the importance of folks like ourselves being able to sit down and talk more about our struggles and our successes and things like that. And I know both you and I are on EO, and just want to get your thoughts on the importance. It seems like you had a great mentor when you were at Xerox, and that kind of started your trajectory. But for me, the first 3 years in business really had nobody to turn to, and just trial and error. So it seems like too, when you were able to join something like EO and be around more business owners, that it was able to skyrocket your potential as well.
Totally, yeah. The mentor was super helpful early on, and he was a coach to me. One thing that's interesting to me is I'm a naturally introverted person. So, I'm an introvert. I show up more extroverted for my role and job. And so I do a lot of the analysis in my head and introvertedly. So it forces me to the peer groups. And then I'm lucky because when I started the company, there was 3 of us. It was Nick, Rob, and I. And so, you kind of have a little bit of a peer group even within the executive team. And you're all aligned in motivation. So those things I think have helped. But EO has been tremendous. It's just crazy because I'm 33 now, and I've only had the experience that I've had, and I've been able over the last, I think 3 or 4 years in EO to get, 50 years worth of experience, where if I hadn't done that, I would have gotten, 3 years of experience.
I agree. What would be your advice to a college student or someone like yourself that works at a company, decides they want to go all in, they have a good idea, they even start making some money in that for those first couple of clients? What are the number one things you're telling them to do or look out for ultimate success?
So I'd tell them, don't avoid analysis paralysis. So I see a lot of people, I've done it, build the Taj Mahal of products or processes. And it's like, doesn't matter. Just go start doing it and then growth hack it as you go. And then once you've proven it works and you're making money, then start laying, and you have to have processes because, it's breaking. Then you start laying that. And then 2 is, you better be able to drive business. I mean, that if you want to be a CEO, if you want to make a ton of money, you have to drive business.
Yeah.
If you can't, bring revenue to the company, then you can be really valuable, but you're probably not going to be able to be the top person because, that is a big key.
You need to be able to be in that meeting and close the client if you're going to be CEO.
And figure out how to get the deals. If you think you're going to go hire somebody that's going to do it for you, maybe down the road once you're established, but you're going to pay a lot. And really, if that person's that good, then they would be doing it on their own.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point because I've heard other business owners like really have that like VP of sales do all that for them, and that's just talk about leverage and talk about being in a place of vulnerability. If that person, to your point, comes in and says, I'm done, and that person's generating all the revenue for you, I think there are some CEOs that apply that, and that would just put me in such a scary position if I was in that position.
And I think once you're established, you can do that. So,
yeah.
I mean, like that's like now I'm not as involved, obviously, but like in the early days when you're, gunslinging and you're getting this off the ground, you're either going to have to give a ton of equity up and have a founder that's going to do that, or you're probably going to have a hard time affording that person, or you got to do it yourself. So most of the time I see that. It's funny though. I think a lot of entrepreneurs that are not maybe as successful, they're either afraid to do that. Another thing that I see a lot is they'll come to people like us and they're like, hey, we want to do internet marketing because they're scared of sales.
Yes.
And I'm like, hey, you need to do sales until you have a fire that's burning, and then we can start putting some gasoline on that thing with internet marketing. But you're not going to go from... It's
not a magical switch you can just turn on. Exactly. All right, so I want to do some rapid fire questions to kind of wrap up. Appreciate your time so far, man. All right, so what time do you wake up?
I get up at 5:10 right now.
Awesome. Workout routine.
My workout routine's been really bad, but I'm just getting back into it, and I do about 150 push-ups a day.
Nice. How do you manage stress?
Watering the yard is probably my biggest release. I'm probably a huge violator of California watering.
Is that every day after work? Like, let me just
not every day. I'm not that bad, but that is good for me. And just again, I'm an introvert, so just kind of having some of my alone time is a big way that I do that.
I'm with you there too. I just have to go home sometimes, just like stare at a wall for 20 minutes, just like decompress with that mental exhaustion. So it sounds like you do the same thing. Who inspires you in business?
My team, honestly, the people that I work with day in and day out, seeing their energy, seeing their faces light up when they learn something new and are successful. I walk into that office and I'm pumped.
Yeah. Favorite quote, if you got one.
I don't know if I have a favorite quote. I'd say that the biggest one I would have is figure it out. And that was what somebody told me early on. And so I believe in that in a big way. Is there's not a manual for everything. You got to piece it together and figure it out.
What business tool has been the most instrumental to your success?
Business tool, I live and die by the calendar. Pretty basic business tool.
Yeah, that's important.
But it keeps me from as you get pulled in a lot of directions. It helps me be disciplined. It helps me plan my weeks, and so
all the way down to date night or family night and stuff like that.
Exactly.
That's important. Work-life balance. I think as CEOs, entrepreneurs, we have a tough time always dealing with this. And I think even the word work-life balance is somewhat of an issue as well. But best advice on how you deal with that or how you balance it.
Yeah, I think I'll have periods where I do a good job and periods where I do a bad job. I think I've done a bad job lately. The biggest thing for me is when I go home, to close the computer and to put the phone down. And so I struggle with that. Even being addicted to my phone where I'm not necessarily working, but I'm playing a game or whatever. And so I think that's the biggest key, so that when you are home, you're present with the people around you. And, that's something that I need to keep working on and put a bigger focus on.
What does it mean to you to be an entrepreneur?
So I think I don't even consider myself an entrepreneur. It's funny. I think I just like business. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of people are kind of nerds with the whole I'm an entrepreneur, or you'll see it on someone's LinkedIn. It's like,
oh yeah.
So I don't know.
A major problem in our community on that.
And so I have a different view. I think it's just being a problem solver. Honestly, I think if you're an entrepreneur, I guess, or a great business person, you're typically a really good problem solver. And so you can solve problems, but you'll also take action on them. So you can figure out the solutions, but then you'll do it. You won't just tell somebody else or stop there. So that's really what I see as an entrepreneur.
This may tie into your favorite quote, but best piece of advice you ever received, or maybe something you've heard from a mentor or a colleague when you were going through a difficult time that maybe helped.
Yeah. So, I remember my mentor, he told me when I was hitting a wall at one point, he's like, hey, your secret weapon has always been your hustle and relentlessness. So if you have hustle and you're relentless, you could be worse than other people. you'll outperform, you'll get yours. And so, that is the best piece of advice that I've ever had.
You mentioned I think 1 Minute Manager earlier in the program, but what book would you recommend to other business owners that have kind of helped you?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are in your life.
Yeah.
I read the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and it was like the perfect timing. It was like one of those times where you read the book and you're like, oh my gosh, this is speaking to me.
I did the same thing with Good to Great, Jim Collins. There was just a certain point in my business, and I'm like, this is inspiring, this is amazing, this is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's just it's depending on where your headspace is, and I feel like sometimes those books just find you at the right time.
I know, it's incredible how that works. Excluding yours, what company or business do you admire the most, and what are they doing that you kind of want to mimic?
Oh man, that's a good question. I'd say one of my flaws is that I do stay a little bit laser focused on my own business and what I'm doing, and I think it's something I need to improve on. I really like companies right now, and I admire companies a lot that build great marketing and growth into their product and business model. So it's really difficult to market or to go one-to-one. And so I love like Bird I hate those things, but I think it's genius.
It's
because,
funny you say that, yeah.
Their people are marketing for them, or even 23andMe, is one where my wife bought that and we've gifted it to like 10 different people. And so I love those types of businesses where they design the product around, explosive growth to where they just have to get that thing burning and then it's going to take off.
And this is the last one, kind of a deep one, but what's the end goal for your career or business? Where do you want to be?
Yeah, so I think it evolves. My vision and what drives me has been, like I said, I think we have 10 CEOs at Power Digital right now. I look in like the NFL and there's these great head coaches trees, and they have the coaching tree and you're like, you're seeing the two guys that are in the Super Bowl and you're like, they both coached under Pete Carroll or whoever. So I would love to see that and then be able to be in a role where those people are like, Grayson did so much for me and they value me and they come to me for advice, and I can maybe be on their board or an advisor to them and be a part of what they're doing.
That's awesome.
And see them be far more successful than I ever was.
Well, there it is, man. A ton of value. I really appreciate you breaking all that down for the audience and for me as well. But Grayson Lafrenz of Power Digital, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Great time.
Thanks.